Have you ever walked from a conversation feeling completely drained, even though nothing obviously bad happened? Or found yourself constantly questioning your own reality after spending time with certain people? Here's what's really unsettling. The most dangerous people in your life probably aren't the ones you'd expect. They're not the obvious villains or the overtly toxic individuals you can spot from a mile away. Instead, they're often charming, helpful, even loving family members and close friends. They smile, they care, they seem genuinely concerned about your well-being. But something invisible is happening beneath the surface, something that can slowly erode your sense of self without you even realizing it's occurring. What I'm talking about is psychological projection, one of the most powerful yet invisible forces shaping human relationships. It's the unconscious process where people take their own unresolved emotions, fears, and inner conflicts and unknowingly dump them onto you. They're not doing this maliciously. In fact, they're completely unaware it's happening. But the impact on your mental health can be devastating. Think about it this way. We all have parts of ourselves we don't like. Anger we've never processed, insecurities we've never faced, trauma we've never healed. Most of us push these uncomfortable feelings deep down into our unconscious mind, thinking we've dealt with them. But here's the problem. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it stops affecting you. These buried emotions don't disappear. They find other ways to express themselves, often through the people closest to us. In our hyper-connected world, this phenomenon is more dangerous than ever. We're constantly surrounded by people's unfiltered emotions through social media, workplace dynamics, and intensive family relationships. We've never been more psychologically entangled with others, yet we've never been less equipped to recognize when someone else's inner chaos is becoming our reality. Understanding these hidden psychological dynamics isn't just academic knowledge. It's essential survival skills for maintaining your mental health and sense of self in relationships. Today, we're going to explore the specific types of people whose unconscious minds can hijack your own, and more importantly, how to protect yourself from becoming an unwilling participant in someone else's internal drama. The emotional projector, when you become their mirror. Picture this. You're having a normal conversation with someone, maybe discussing weekend plans or a movie you saw. Suddenly, they snap at you about being judgmental when all you did was express a preference, or they accuse you of not caring about them when you were literally just listening. What just happened? You've encountered an emotional projector, someone whose inner world is so chaotic that they can't tell the difference between what's happening inside their head and what's actually happening in reality. They're like a broken movie projector, constantly casting their internal emotional film onto whatever screen is closest, and unfortunately, that screen is often you. These people turn you into a character in their unconscious drama. If they're feeling insecure, suddenly you're the one making them feel small. If they're angry at themselves, you become the target of their frustration. The most maddening part? They genuinely believe their perception is accurate. They're not lying. They literally cannot see the difference between their projection and your actual behavior. Here's what makes this so dangerous. You start questioning your own reality. Did I really sound judgmental? Am I actually being uncaring? Before you know it, you're walking on eggshells, constantly editing yourself to avoid triggering their next projection. You've become a prisoner in someone else's psychological prison. The perfect performer, living behind the mask. Now let's talk about someone who seems to have it all together, the perfect performer. These are the people who always know exactly what to say, how to act, what to wear. They're masters of social situations, always appropriate, always composed. But here's what's terrifying. There's nobody home behind those perfectly calibrated responses. The perfect performer has become so identified with their social mask that they've completely lost touch with their authentic self. They've spent so much energy being what others expect that they no longer know who they actually are beneath the performance. And this creates a bizarre, hollow dynamic in relationships. When you're with a perfect performer, conversations feel scripted. Their emotions seem rehearsed. They respond to your vulnerabilities with textbook empathy, but something feels off, like you're talking to a sophisticated chatbot rather than a human being. They make you feel crazy for wanting something real, something spontaneous, something genuinely human. The danger isn't just that they're unauthentic, it's that they pressure you to perform too.
They become uncomfortable with your natural reactions, your messy emotions, your human imperfections. Slowly, you start performing for them, hiding parts of yourself that don't fit their perfectly curated world. You lose yourself trying to match their artificial standard. The shadow denier, when the darkness explodes. Here's someone really dangerous, the person who prides themselves on being good. They're always positive, always helpful, always in control of their emotions. They never get angry, never feel jealous, never have a mean thought. Sounds wonderful, right? Wrong. This is a psychological time bomb waiting to explode. The shadow denier has shoved every uncomfortable emotion, every selfish impulse, every human darkness deep into their unconscious. They've convinced themselves these feelings don't exist. But here's the thing about psychological energy. It doesn't disappear. It just finds other ways to express itself. You'll notice it in small ways at first, the passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern, the way they subtly undermine others while maintaining plausible deniability. They become the moral police, constantly judging others for displaying the very emotions they refuse to acknowledge in themselves. Then one day, the dam breaks. All that repressed anger, jealousy, and resentment comes flooding out in a torrent that destroys everything in its path. The scariest part? They often have no memory of their explosion afterwards, or they justify it as completely reasonable. Living with a shadow denier is like living next to a volcano that insists it's extinct. The guilt operator, weaponizing moral authority. Some people have figured out that guilt is the most powerful weapon in human relationships. The guilt operator doesn't manipulate you with obvious tactics. They use moral authority, concern for your well-being, and righteous indignation to make you feel terrible about your natural human needs and desires. They're masters of phrases like, "I'm only saying this because I care about you," or "someone needs to tell you the truth." But their truth always coincidentally serves their needs while making you feel ashamed of yours. They position themselves as your moral superior, the one brave enough to correct your flaws. They turn your conscience against you, using your own values as chains to bind you to their agenda. The energy vampire, the bottomless pit of need. Finally, we have the energy vampire, perhaps the most exhausting type of all. These people seem to have an infinite capacity for drama, crisis, and emotional need. Every conversation becomes about their problems. Every interaction leaves you feeling drained. They're not necessarily malicious, but they consume your emotional resources like a black hole consumes light. They create a relationship where you exist solely to manage their emotional state. Your role is to listen, comfort, advise, and support, but never to have your own needs or problems. If you try to share something important happening in your life, they quickly redirect the conversation back to their latest crisis. What makes this particularly dangerous is that it often feels like love or friendship. They may be genuinely grateful for your support, which creates a powerful addiction cycle. You get brief moments of feeling needed and appreciated, followed by longer periods of exhaustion and resentment. You become like a drug dealer, constantly supplying emotional fixes while slowly destroying your own well-being. The most chilling realization? These people don't want to get better. They want to be managed, supported, and enabled. Your growth, your healing, your independence threatens their supply of attention and emotional labor. They need you to stay smaller, weaker, and more available than them. Here's what ties all these types together. They turn relationships into unconscious puppet shows where you're always playing a role you never auditioned for, solving problems you didn't create, and managing emotions that aren't yours. The question is, how do you break free from these invisible psychological chains?
The first step to freedom is recognition. These psychological patterns only have power over you when they operate in the shadows of your awareness. The moment you can name what's happening, this person is projecting their insecurity onto me, or I'm being guilt-tripped into abandoning my boundaries, you've already begun to break the spell. But here's the most important insight. This isn't just about protecting yourself from others. We all have the capacity for these behaviors within us. The difference between psychological freedom and unconscious slavery is simple. Are you willing to look honestly at your own shadow, or will you spend your life projecting it onto others? Start by asking yourself, in which relationships do I feel most drained? Where am I constantly explaining myself or walking on eggshells? Those are your red flags. Your exhaustion is your psyche's way of telling you that something is seriously wrong with the dynamic. If this video opened your eyes to patterns you've been unconsciously living with, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment below sharing which type resonated most with your experience, or if you're brave enough, which one you recognized in yourself. Sometimes the most powerful growth comes from honest self-reflection. Hit that like button if this perspective shifted something for you, and subscribe because we're going deeper into the psychology of human relationships. Next week, we're exploring how to rebuild your sense of self after these psychological entanglements. You don't want to miss it. Your future self will thank you for watching.